So today on Pulp Tales, we're going to look at probably another one of the most important Dell Goldkey Whitman imprints of the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. Of course, it's the ever popular version of the Twilight Zone TV show. Now, Dell Goldkey had numerous horror imprints during its golden era from the late early 1960s to the 1970s, and Twilight Zone was a perfect fit because not only did the Twilight Zone comic book kind of reflect Rod Serling's love of the macabre and the twists and the short story, it basically featured a lot of artwork that was not only groundbreaking for its time but important. Twilight Zone, which it was coming out of the Comics Court Authority a little bit. Now, in 1961, Western Publishing helped bring the Twilight Zone to the graphic medium. Its first series of comic books were released through Dell, and it was restarted in the Gold Key imprint after 4 issues. Now, in total, there's 91 complete issues, with some being reissues and reprints and translated compilations. Now, it went over to Whitman line for a final issue. Now, and by 1982, it folded with 92 issues. It was published, of course, for 16 to 17 years, and a number of notable comic talents worked on the series, including Len Wein, Alex Toth, George Evans, Joe Certa, who actually designed the Martian Manhunter for DC. And it gave also the important Frank Miller his first professional job in the comics book industry. Now, what really stood out with this comic book was not only the beautiful and chilling painted covers. It had aspects of science fiction, horror, the macabre, different genres of short storytelling. Each issue could have upwards of 3 stories with kind of one-page text and photo, kind of descriptive short stories, which were very, very collectible. You couldn't stop rereading them. I had at least 4 or 5 in my collection, purchased around the early to mid 1970s by my parents in Gravel Hill, New Brunswick, and let me tell you, they were an important part of the collection for many years. What's really important about the Twilight Zone magazine, it did do comic book versions of Twilight Zone episodes, but very few. These were not to say original tales, because everything that Goldkey put out was influenced by something else. But the crazy part of it is the front covers were quite interesting, because the photo that was run by Rod Serling, made him look like a Catholic priest. Just a shading of his collar and the aspect, he looked very stern. I thought when I first saw Rod Serling that he was a minister or a priest in real life, and he was far from it. He was a very straightforward guy who loved everything about life, especially his family and his, different people around him. So if you have a chance, the originals in high quality are very, very collectible, several $100 range. I think the whole set of 91 issues in mint condition can go between $25,000 to $100,000 in PSA 9.5 or above. It's very rare to find a perfect Dell version of Twilight Zone, because the comic book itself was a little bit beyond the dimensions, no pun intended, of a regular comic book. It was a little bit 2 inches off in either way, 2 inches wider and 2 inches, vertical shorter. And what really, really stands out here as well, they were available more in Canada, across Canada, than people probably remember. It was a very popular series in Canada, because in Canada, Rod Serling is considered kind of the only writer who we think is Canadian that we would have made Canadian if we would have just said so. We would have welcomed Rod in open arms as our short story laureate. And anyway, this podcast is dedicated to Rod's daughter Anne Serling, who basically is still very active with the Serling family legacy. Wrote a book about Rod, her father, and very important. And Anne, of course, was the inspiration for the character, the hitchhiker, and that's where a connection with the Twilight Zone series, pretty well started and continued over the years. Carol Serling, the rest of the Serling family, have been very, very important people in the aspect of keeping the legacy going. Also, the various Facebook sites, including the Twilight Zone ones, Night Gallery. It's too bad the current Night Gallery has kind of lost the feel of the original Night Gallery, what Rod Serling intended, but hopefully it'll get better. There's always a hope that a series can get better when Rod Serling is the major influence. Look at Black Mirror; it has extensively improved from its original episodes, and it's keeping the Twilight Zone legacy going in what do you call the British form. Anyway, so on this rainy Saturday in New Brunswick, we're hoping everybody is keeping away from the barricades and respecting the flood. Please stay safe. Have a good day. Bye.